The Federal in Federalism from iCivics. United States. The United States is one country, but it's also a bunch of states. You could almost say it's a group of states that are, well, united. When our country was born, 13 states already existed. Each one had been a British colony before gaining independence from Britain after the Revolutionary War. These new states wanted to come together as one nation, but they also wanted to be independent. After all, they'd just won their freedom from a powerful government. They needed a central government that would share power with the states, and that's exactly what they created when they wrote the Constitution. Each state already had its own government and court system, so the new Americans weren't exactly running amok. But if the United States was going to be able to deal with other nations, it needed one government that would speak for the entire country. It also needed one central government to do things like declare war on other countries, keep a military, and negotiate treaties with other countries. There also needed to be federal courts where citizens from different states could resolve their disputes. The United States Constitution creates a central government known as the federal government. The federal government deals with issues that affect the entire country. Each state also has its own state government that only handles the affairs of that state. This division of power between a central government and state governments is called federalism. The federal government gets all of its power from the Constitution. In order to keep the federal government from becoming too powerful, the Constitution says that any power not given to the federal government is a power the states or the people keep for themselves. These powers are said to be reserved to the states. There are also a few powers that both the states and the federal government share. These are called concurrent powers because concurrent means happening at the same time. And as you see with the overlap of these two circles, exclusively federal powers, exclusively state powers, or reserved powers, and the concurrent or shared powers. The Supremacy Clause. Before the Constitution, the United States tried another government that was very weak. It wasn't able to get much done because states could just ignore all the laws it passed. And they did. The Constitution has some very important language to prevent this. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, shall be the supreme law of the land. That means federal laws passed by Congress are supreme. They are superior to state laws. The founders of our country learned from experience that this was necessary in order for the federal government to keep the power the Constitution gives it. Federal power, expressed powers. The Constitution gives Congress two types of powers. The most obvious type is expressed powers. When you express yourself, you state how you feel. Similarly, expressed powers are actually stated or expressed in the Constitution. Each branch has expressed powers, but you mostly hear this term in reference to Congress. That's because the Constitution gives a long list of powers that Congress has. For example, Congress has the power to coin money, declare war, and establish immigration laws. Some of the president's expressed powers include negotiating treaties with other countries, nominating justices to the Supreme Court, and pardoning people who have committed a federal crime. Federal powers, implied powers. Implied powers are not expressly stated in the Constitution. When you imply something, your intention is clear even though you don't actually say it. For example, if you have permission to go to the mall, you probably also have permission to go into stores in the mall. Permission to go into the stores is implied. In the Constitution, the implied powers of Congress come from the Necessary and Proper Clause. This is a part of the Constitution that says Congress may make any law that is necessary and proper for carrying out its express powers. So the Constitution doesn't say Congress has the power to create a postal service website, but it does say Congress can establish post offices. Permission to create the website is implied because it is necessary and proper to running the post office. Sometimes Congress exercises power it does not appear to have. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 is a good example. Congress wanted to prohibit racial discrimination in America, but that's not on the list of powers Congress has. So, how could Congress do this? They did it by finding a link between racial discrimination and interstate commerce, something Congress does have power over. The Civil Rights Act prohibits racial discrimination by any facility that has anything to do with interstate commerce, which almost everything does. Finding these kinds of links is how Congress takes many actions that at first appear to be beyond its power. Today's federalism debate. Just as when the nation was born, many people today are concerned about a powerful federal government. They worry that their freedom will be limited if the federal government makes decisions that should be made by local governments. At the same time, others worry that some issues need one decision that applies to everyone. They believe it isn't fair when some states do more or less to address a problem than other states do. If you follow the news, you'll see the federalism debate everywhere. Does the federal government have the power to pass laws about guns, healthcare, schools? The variety of opinions on these questions are all part of the 200-year-old struggle between federal and state power. If not federalism, then what? When the founders wrote the Constitution, they could have chosen any type of government. What if they had chosen something else? Would it have lessened the power struggle between the states and the central government? Maybe, but there are benefits and drawbacks to any type of government. The following activity compares federalism with two other forms of government. Read about each type and mark the characteristic S if it's a strength and W if it's a weakness. If you're in my class, you don't actually need to take that step at this time. What role does the central government play? Federal. Think of federal as a set of chairs. A federal form of government splits power between independent states and a central government. The power rests in both places, and each gets its authority from a governing document, like the U.S. Constitution. Independent branches inside the central government may also share power. The states and central government must work together and balance each other out, like a set of chairs around a table. Confederal, many different chairs. The confederal form of government is an association of independent states. The central government gets its authority from the independent states. Power rests in each individual state, whose representatives meet to address the needs of the group. America tried a confederal system before the Constitution. It didn't work because the states did not give the central government enough power to do its job. A confederation of states is like a bunch of different chairs grouped together. They hold power independently, but work collectively. Unitary, one big chair. In a unitary form of government, all the power rests in a central government. The country may be divided into states or other subunits, but they have no power of their own. For example, England depends on its parliament, a legislative body to create and enforce the laws in the country. The leader of the nation, the prime minister, is a member of the parliament, does not have any more power than its members. A unitary government is like one really big chair, with all of the government's power sitting in one place. This concludes the reading.